Don't touch the elevator controls. Madeline Sterling's voice cut through the narrow private lift just as Ethan Caldwell reached toward the emergency panel. The elevator had stopped between the 31st and 32nd floors of Sterling Tower, hard enough to jolt the toolbox at Ethan's feet. A red warning light flashed above the doors. Madeline sat perfectly still in her powered wheelchair, one hand on the joystick, the other gripping the edge of her leather portfolio. "The last technician reset it 3 times and made it worse," she said. Ethan listened instead of answering. He could hear the ventilation fan, the faint vibration of cables, and beneath both, a soft electronic click repeating every 5 seconds. He crouched beside the lower service panel. "The lift is receiving a command." "From where?" "Not from inside here." Madeline's eyes sharpened. "Then from where?" Ethan removed 2 screws, traced a thin gray wire, and found a wireless relay clipped behind the original controller. It did not belong to the elevator manufacturer. He disconnected it. The red light went dark. A second later, the lift settled level with the 32nd floor and the doors opened. Victor Kane stood on the other side with 2 security officers and an expression of practiced concern. "Madeline, are you all right?" She looked at him, then at the small relay in Ethan's hand. "Apparently someone decided the elevator should stop without asking me." Victor's gaze moved to Ethan. "You must be the contractor." "Ethan Caldwell. You were hired to adjust an office, not dismantle our security systems." Ethan held up the relay. "Then your security system is attached to the elevator in a place it should not be." Victor's smile did not change. "Give that to me." Ethan looked at Madeline. "Do you want him to have it?" The question landed harder than an argument. One of the guards shifted his weight. Victor's face tightened by a fraction. Madeline extended her hand. "Give it to me." Ethan placed the relay in her palm. She rolled past Victor without another word. Ethan picked up his toolbox and followed her into an office wrapped in glass and afternoon sunlight. He expected the billionaire chief executive he had read about in the work order. He did not expect the silver photograph on her desk. A younger Madeline sat in a rehabilitation room beside a woman in blue scrubs. The woman wore a thin silver bracelet with a tiny crescent charm. Ethan stopped so abruptly that the toolbox struck his knee. Madeline noticed. "What?" He stared at the photograph. He had bought that bracelet in Vermont 11 years earlier. His wife had worn it until the day she died. "Where did you get that picture?" Madeline's hand closed over the frame. "Why?" Ethan's voice dropped. "Because the woman beside you was my wife." The office went silent. Victor, still standing in the doorway, did not look surprised. For years earlier, Laura Caldwell had spent 6 months helping Madeline Sterling through rehabilitation after a spinal injury. 3 years earlier, Laura died, leaving Ethan with 8-year-old Chloe and a life he had rebuilt around work, school pickups, and grief he rarely discussed. He knew Laura protected the privacy of her clients. He had never known Madeline was one of them. Now Madeline sat 6 feet away with one hand over Laura's photograph. Her name was Laura Caldwell, Ethan said. Madeline looked at Victor. "You knew." Victor admitted security had identified Ethan before the appointment. "I was protecting you from an emotional complication." Madeline's chair turned toward him. "Leave." Victor reminded her about a board call, but she repeated the order. After he left, Ethan opened his toolbox. "You are staying?" she asked. "You still have a desk that does not fit you." Most people would have questions. "I do." "They can wait until you want to answer them." That night in Queens, Chloe sat at the kitchen table with spelling cards and Laura's old instant camera. A final notice waited beneath Ethan's keys, 2 months of late rent, 10 days before eviction proceedings. "Is that bad?" Chloe asked. "Adult paperwork." She gave him Laura's skeptical look. "That means bad." Ethan promised to buy film for her school memory project on Saturday, then waited until she was asleep before opening the cedar box that held Laura's things. Inside was an old rehabilitation notebook. Most pages were technical, but one name appeared repeatedly, Maddie. Laura had written, "She is not difficult. She is surrounded by people who benefit when she doubts herself." A later page showed a wireless relay and a serial number beneath the words Executive Continuity System. Installed without patient approval. Ask Arthur before trusting Victor. Ethan was still staring at the sentence when Victor called. Finish your contracted work and avoid discussing matters outside your scope. Ethan mentioned Laura's note. Victor went quiet, then said, "You have a daughter, Mr. Caldwell. Keep your life simple for her." The line went dead. The next morning, Madeline placed Laura's notebook beside the elevator relay. Arthur Sterling, her father, had died 2.5 years earlier. Laura had died 3 years earlier. Whatever they feared had begun before either death. Madeline ordered Ethan to continue with the office first. He lowered the desk, moved controls within reach, repaired a cabinet, and rebuilt the coffee station. At every decision he asked instead of assuming. By noon Madeline had stopped treating the questions as insults and started debating measurements with him. 2 inches farther left. That puts it behind your elbow. My elbow has survived worse. Your elbow is not paying the invoice. A short laugh escaped her before she could stop it. A water main break closed Chloe's school early, and Mrs. Alvarez brought her to the tower. Chloe noticed Laura's photograph almost immediately. "That is my mom." Madeline nodded. "I knew her. Was she nice to you?" "She was honest when everyone else was trying to be nice." Chloe considered that. "That sounds like Mom." She looked at Madeline's wheelchair. "Is that faster than my bike?" "Downhill, probably. Dad should install better brakes." Madeline laughed. Outside the partly open door, Victor Kane stopped walking. The warmth lasted less than an hour. Ethan removed the brass cover from the wall controls beside Madeline's desk and found a second relay, then a third. One led to the office door. Another routed through the communications cabinet. The third connected to the private elevator. Network. Ethan photographed each serial number before touching anything. Madeline watched from behind him. "Can they control those systems remotely?" "Yes." "Can they read them?" "Depending on the software, yes." She turned to her computer and opened her calendar. Several meetings from the last 6 months were marked cancelled, though she remembered attending preparations for them. Her private email archive showed permission changes she had never requested. 3 messages to board members had been redirected to Victor's office. 2 investor calls had ended when her communications panel abruptly restarted. "He told me the failures were random." Ethan pointed to the relay. "Random failures do not usually use matching hardware." Madeline opened another folder and frowned. "My father's foundation records are gone." "Which foundation?" "The Sterling Independence Fund. He created it after my accident. $12 million was supposed to support accessible technology grants." The folder displayed a single line, "Archive transferred. Authorized by executive oversight." Madeline's face changed. Not fear. Calculation. Victor controls executive oversight. Before Ethan could answer, his phone rang. An older woman introduced herself as Margaret Doyle. "I worked for Arthur Sterling for 27 years, she said. "Laura Caldwell trusted me. Arthur trusted me. If you found the relays, Victor knows you found them." Ethan looked through the glass wall. Victor was gone. "What do you have?" "Records Arthur removed from the company before he died. I will not discuss them by phone. Bring Madeline to the Bryant Library reading room at 6. No assistance. No company car. Why contact me?" Because Laura told me if Victor ever turned her notes against Madeline, the safest person in the room would be the one Victor could not buy. Ethan glanced at the eviction notice still folded inside his jacket. She may have overestimated me. Margaret's answer came without hesitation. Then prove her wrong or prove her right. 6 o'clock. They never made it to 6 without a fight. At 4:20, Sterling Tower security entered Madeline's office carrying a printed incident report. Victor followed them. Ethan Caldwell's access is suspended, he said. Madeline rolled away from the desk. On whose authority? Mine, pending investigation. He placed a folder on the lowered work surface. Inside were procurement records showing that Caldwell Adaptive Services had purchased 3 wireless relays matching the hidden devices 2 weeks earlier. A second page showed Ethan's contractor badge entering the communications room at 2:14 that morning, 20 minutes before he had arrived at the building. A third document contained an authorization request using Ethan's digital signature. That is not mine, Ethan said. Victor looked almost sympathetic. Of course you would say that. Madeline's eyes moved across the papers. The badge log can be cloned. Perhaps. The invoice? Victor asked. Ethan read the supplier name. He had bought relays from that company, but not these models. Someone used my business account. Victor turned to Madeline. He arrives because of Laura. He discovers convenient evidence only he understands. Then your systems begin showing deeper problems. Ask yourself who benefits from making you distrust everyone around you. Ethan felt the trap close with frightening precision. Victor did not need Madeline to believe him completely. He only needed doubt. Madeline looked at Ethan. Did you enter the communications room today? No. Did you buy these units? No. Can you prove either answer right now? Ethan held her gaze. No. Victor's satisfaction remained hidden, but Ethan saw it. Madeline's hand moved to the wheelchair control. Then leave the building until I know what is true. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her Victor was using the very fear Laura had written about. He wanted to demand trust. Instead he closed his toolbox. All right. Victor blinked, as if he had expected resistance. Ethan placed his photographs of the relays on the desk. The serial numbers are time-stamped. Keep copies somewhere Victor cannot reach. Madeline's eyes hardened. Do not tell me what to do. You are right. Ethan nodded toward the photographs. They are there if you want them. He walked out. Chloe was waiting in the lobby when Ethan came down. 2 reporters stood outside, and the television above reception already carried a story accusing a financially struggling contractor of manipulating a disabled chief executive. Then Ethan saw a photograph of his own apartment building on the screen. Why is our house on television? Chloe asked. By the time they reached Queens, 2 clients had cancelled jobs and his landlord had warned him that the overdue balance still had to be paid. That night Chloe found a folded service receipt taped inside the back cover of Laura's notebook. It was 4 years old and listed 3 executive continuity relays by serial number. 2 matched Ethan's photographs from Madeline's office. Laura had added one line, Arthur says Victor ordered expansion. Margaret has originals. The hardware had been inside Sterling Tower years before Ethan's contract existed. Victor's simplest accusation had just collapsed. Is that good? Chloe asked. It helps. She watched him put the receipt into a plastic sleeve. Are we going to lose the apartment? Ethan looked at her. He had hidden bills for months because he thought protection meant keeping fear away from her. Tonight that felt uncomfortably close to the kind of decision he had criticized in other people. We are behind on rent, he said. I am working on it. Chloe was quiet. Are we going to be okay? I do not know exactly what okay looks like yet. He reached across the table. But you will know what is happening. I promise. Chloe squeezed his hand. Mom would like that answer better. Your mother liked inconvenient answers. So do I. Ethan laughed softly, the first time all evening. At 10:12, Madeline called. The relays are 4 years old, Ethan said before she could speak. Laura saved a service receipt. I know. How? I checked the manufacturer registration against the serial numbers you left. Victor's folder was false. Ethan leaned back. Then why are you calling? Because I owe you something I do not enjoy giving. An apology? Do not make this worse. He waited. Madeline exhaled. I was wrong to let his evidence decide the entire question. You had reason to be careful. That is not the same as being right. Ethan appreciated the distinction. Margaret wanted us at the library at 6. She called me after you left. She moved the meeting to 7 tomorrow morning. Why? Victor's people followed her. The line went quiet. Ethan, you do not have to come back into this. He looked at Chloe asleep again on the couch, then at Laura's receipt. He used my daughter's home on television. I saw. So this is already in my life. That is not a reason to risk more. No. Laura is. Another silence. Then Madeline said, 7 o'clock. Bryant Library. I will arrange nothing through my office. The next morning, Margaret Doyle met Ethan and Madeline at the Bryant Library. Arthur Sterling's former executive assistant carried copies showing $12 million from the Sterling Independence Fund routed through consulting firms connected to Victor's family. Several transfers carried Madeline's digital approval on dates when she was in medical procedures. Margaret also produced a leadership continuity memo Arthur had signed for only 90 days after the accident. Victor had quietly kept the permissions for years: email routing, calendars, building access, and emergency corporate actions. Arthur discovered it too late. The originals were in a bank box requiring Margaret's key and a phrase only Madeline would know. Ask her where she wanted the curtains, Margaret said. Madeline closed her eyes. Laura had asked that question during rehabilitation, when everyone else was making decisions around her. Halfway, Madeline answered. Morning light, but not the glare. 3 slow knocks sounded at the door. Victor entered before they could leave. He placed a $1 million settlement in front of Ethan. Sign a confidentiality agreement, withdraw the accusations, and the money would solve the rent, the business, and Chloe's future. Madeline said nothing. Ethan read the figure, imagined telling his landlord the problem was over, then slid the papers back. You assumed being a good father means making my daughter comfortable at any price. Victor's expression hardened. Your wife made the same mistake. Ethan stood. What happened to Laura? Victor corrected himself. Too late. I meant she was naive. Madeline heard it too. Victor collected the envelope and announced that the board would vote on temporary succession at 9 the next morning. I will be there, Madeline said. Victor looked at her. Will you? At Midtown Federal, Margaret's key and Madeline's phrase opened box 417. Inside were original transfer records, vendor contracts, a voice recorder, and an independent maintenance report requested by Laura 4 years earlier. The report documented the same unauthorized relays and showed Victor's executive oversight office closing the service ticket before repairs were completed. Arthur's recording was worse. Confronted about the missing money, Victor said, every time she resists, the systems remind the board why she needs us. Margaret warned that Victor could still attack each piece separately. Ethan studied the maintenance report and noticed the controller manufacturer. Safety diagnostics were often mirrored outside the customer network. By afternoon, former service technician Daniel Cho confirmed that Sterling Tower's controller kept a protected manufacturer archive that local administrators could not rewrite without invalidating its signature. He agreed to authenticate it for an independent audit. Victor retaliated immediately. Sterling filed a civil claim against Ethan, his insurer suspended coverage, and his landlord repeated the Friday deadline. Madeline offered legitimate legal help beyond the contract. Ethan refused anything that could look like a payoff. "Pay what you already owe me. Nothing more." That evening Chloe started packing books into a box in case they had to move. Ethan told her the truth, they might lose the apartment, and he was trying to stop it. "Are you doing a dumb thing?" she asked. "Possibly. Mom would be angry." "Thank you for the support." Chloe leaned against him. "She would still help you." At 7:45 the next morning, Madeline's private elevator displayed a red service warning. At 7:47, her Sterling account rejected her password. At 7:50, Victor sent an emergency notice announcing a 9 o'clock board vote on temporary executive succession. At 7:53, security officers arrived outside her office with instructions that all company devices remain on the floor. Victor had built the timeline carefully. Without email, elevator access, or corporate transportation, Madeline would appear absent from the meeting called to decide whether her absences proved incapacity. Ethan arrived through the loading dock with Daniel Cho and an attorney from the independent audit firm Margaret had contacted overnight. Security stopped them immediately. Ethan's badge showed access revoked. Above them, Victor's notice played on lobby screens. The company was taking temporary measures to protect leadership continuity during a period of personal strain. No accusation. No cruelty. Only concern polished until it looked responsible. Upstairs, Madeline stared at the dead elevator display. "He planned this before yesterday." Margaret stood beside her with the safe deposit records. "He has probably planned 10 versions." Madeline looked toward the service corridor Ethan had shown her during the office renovation. Behind a paneled wall was an older freight lift on a separate controller. It was slower and rarely used, but Ethan had repaired its door sensor 2 days earlier. Madeline rolled toward it, then stopped. Her hands were shaking. Margaret pretended not to notice. "I have spent 2 years thinking every malfunction was my fault," Madeline said. "Wrong button. Wrong memory. Wrong temper. Now I know it was him, and I am still afraid to press the button." Margaret waited. Madeline pressed it. The freight elevator opened. At 8:55, Victor began speaking in the boardroom 3 floors below. "This is not a punishment," he told 11 directors. "It is a temporary act of compassion. Madeline needs time away from responsibilities that have become increasingly difficult to manage." He displayed cancelled meetings, angry email excerpts, staff turnover, and clips from the contractor scandal. Each item was real enough to sound convincing and incomplete enough to be dishonest. At 8:58, Ethan was still in the lobby arguing with security. At 8:59, the boardroom doors opened. Madeline entered alone. Victor stopped mid-sentence. She rolled to the head of the table and placed Arthur's sealed records in front of her. "You called a meeting about my ability to lead," she said. "You might have considered inviting me." Victor recovered quickly. "Madeline, your presence does not resolve the concerns before this board." "Good," she said. "Then we can resolve them with evidence." He showed the directors the same documents he had used against Ethan: procurement records, badge logs, assigned access request. "A contractor connected to your former rehabilitation nurse entered restricted systems and then persuaded you that ordinary failures were a conspiracy. That contractor was framed. By whom? You." A few directors shifted in their seats. Victor gave them a tired smile. "This is exactly the escalation I warned you about." Madeline opened Laura's 4-year-old maintenance receipt and the manufacturer report. These relays were installed before Ethan Caldwell ever worked for this company. Victor barely glanced at them. "Old hardware does not prove present misuse." "Correct." Madeline placed Arthur's transfer records beside them. "Neither do $12 million routed to firms connected to your family." Victor's attorney leaned forward. Those were approved consulting arrangements. Using my authorization while I was in medical procedures? Madeline asked. Victor did not answer the question. Instead he turned to the board. Arthur Sterling was gravely ill when these accusations began. Laura Caldwell was not a corporate auditor. And Madeline is relying on documents supplied by people with obvious personal motives. For one dangerous minute, the room moved back toward him. That was Victor's talent. He did not erase facts. He separated them until each looked weak alone. Then the doors opened again. Ethan entered with Daniel Cho, Margaret Doyle, and the independent auditor. Security had allowed them upstairs only after the board's outside counsel demanded preservation of evidence. Ethan stayed near the door. He did not walk to Madeline's side until she looked at him and nodded. Daniel placed a laptop on the conference table. Sterling Towers control system mirrors safety. Diagnostics to the manufacturer archive. The customer can change local settings, but it cannot alter the signed archive. He displayed 4 years of authenticated commands. Elevator shutdowns. Door locks. Communication resets. Permission changes. The pattern intensified before board meetings and after decisions Victor opposed. Each command carried the same administrative credential, executive oversight, Victor Kane's office. Victor stood. Credentials can be stolen. They can, Daniel said. Which is why the system also records the registered approval device. He opened the final column. Every command traced to Victor's corporate security token. The room changed. Victor looked at Ethan. You had access to the building. You could have copied it. Ethan answered for the first time. The archive includes commands from 4 years ago. I entered Sterling Tower for the first time 3 days ago. Victor's attorney whispered to him. Victor ignored her. Madeline pressed play on Arthur's recorder. Her father's tired voice filled the room. He accused Victor of moving fund money, keeping temporary emergency permissions, and manufacturing small failures around Madeline. Then Victor's own recorded voice answered, every time she resists, the systems remind the board why she needs us. No one looked at Madeline's chair now. Victor reached for the recorder. This is private property. Madeline moved it out of reach. So was my email. My calendar. My elevator. My name. She did not shout. She did not need to. Victor turned to the directors. You are prepared to destroy 20 years of leadership because a grieving daughter and a contractor constructed a story from old logs? Madeline looked around the table. No. You are going to decide whether this company can be led by someone who stole $12 million and then used disability as camouflage. She slid 3 resolutions forward: suspend Victor immediately, authorize an independent forensic audit, and revoke every emergency permission held by executive oversight. The first director raised her hand. Then another. Victor watched the majority form before the vote was formally counted. His face did not collapse. Men like Victor rarely gave people that satisfaction. He simply closed his folder and said, "You will regret turning this company into a public scandal." Madeline met his eyes. The scandal already happened. We are just ending the secrecy. Security escorted him out. Only after the doors closed did Madeline let her hands tremble. Ethan noticed, but he did not touch the chair. He stood beside her until she reached for his hand herself. 3 weeks later, Victor Kane was removed from every Sterling position while federal investigators and independent auditors reviewed the fund transfers, false records, and unauthorized system access. Ethan's civil claim was withdrawn. The clients who had cancelled began calling back. Sterling paid his outstanding contract invoice, nothing more. It was enough for Ethan to bring the rent current 2 days before the deadline. When he handed the receipt to Chloe at the kitchen table, she read the amount twice. So we are staying. We are staying. She looked suspicious. Did the billionaire save us? Ethan laughed. No, did you save the billionaire? No, Chloe frowned. Then what happened? Ethan thought about it. A lot of people finally stopped helping the wrong person. That is confusing. It was a confusing week. On Saturday, he kept his promise and bought film for Laura's instant camera. A month later, Ethan finished Madeline's office. The desk fit. The doors worked. The elevator controls had been replaced with a transparent system that logged every remote action and required Madeline's authorization for non-emergency overrides. On his final afternoon, he packed his tools beneath the same walnut desk where he had first seen Laura's photograph. Madeline watched him close the toolbox. I want to offer you a permanent position leading accessibility design. Ethan considered it. Not yet. You are turning down a salary most people would negotiate before breathing. You are still my client. And after that? After that, you can ask again. She smiled. You enjoy making powerful people wait. Only the impatient ones. 3 months after the contract ended, Madeline called him on a Sunday morning. Dinner. Is that a business meeting? No. Is there a broken elevator? No. Then yes. Nothing changed overnight. Madeline did not become softer because she fell in love. Ethan did not stop missing Laura because he began living again. Chloe did not forget her mother when she made room for someone new. Their lives grew together through ordinary things: school concerts, burned pancakes, arguments about work, long walks through Queens, and quiet evenings when nobody needed to perform strength for anyone else. 1 year after the board vote, the Laura Caldwell Center for Assistive Technology opened in Manhattan using the restored Sterling Independence Fund. Its engineers designed affordable mobility systems with the people who would actually use them sitting at the same tables. Margaret attended the opening. Daniel Cho came with his family. Former employees who had raised concerns under Victor returned as advisors. Chloe carried Laura's instant camera and the last sheet of film from a new pack. Everybody closer, she ordered. Madeline rolled beside Ethan. Chloe squeezed between them, stretched out her arm, and pressed the shutter. The photograph slid out slowly. Later that evening, Madeline placed it on her desk beside the older picture of Laura. In the first photograph, Laura stood beside a woman whose life had been reorganized by everyone around her. In the second, Madeline sat between Ethan and Chloe, laughing because Chloe had cut off half of Ethan's hair in the frame. Madeline looked at both photographs for a long time. Ethan came to the doorway. Ready? She turned her chair toward him. Yes. He stepped aside and let her go first.